welcome to the program. I'm Grace Paul Adebayo. Well, a recurrent situation in Nigeria is that during the Yuletide season, there is always fuel scarcity. Well, the NNPC is already making plans to avert that. So let's get straight to business. Our focus today is on oil subsidy. Now, fuel subsidy is going to be one of the main issues the next administration will have to contend with, considering the current administration plans to only finance subsidies till June 2023. According to the federal government, it will take over 6 trillion naira to finance it in 2023. Now, our 4 refineries in Nigeria are in the comatose state, so many things are happening. What will happen rather when federal government removes subsidy? Joining us to have this conversation is a social commentator, Olamide Martins, joins us from Lagos, Nigeria. We'll go on a break and return with our guest. To stay tuned. Glad to have you join us. If you just joined us earlier on the program, I said we'll be having a social commentator. It is Olamide Martins. He joins us from Lagos, Nigeria. Today's topic is a controversial one. It has to do with oil subsidy. People have said it's a drain in the in our resources, in our revenue. But let me put it to you. Have we started, as the government started removing subsidy? Because a liter of fuel goes for 175 naira to 200 naira. It was not so before. So as a result of this increment, is this that they've started removing subsidy. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. And like every other Nigerian, I want to say that we don't actually know what the government is doing as regards policy payments. But what we can say for a fact now is that subsidy is still paid because there was a budgetary demand to that effect. Goes to just for the purpose of subsidy payments. A few marketers are smiling to their banks, and a number of us are still queued up for fuel. And this shouldn't be for a country that boasts to be the 6th largest producer of oil in the world. It's rather very unfortunate.
So I want to know, when the government starts removing subsidy, from what you said, you don't know, or many Nigerians, we are not aware of the situation of things, though the cost of fuel has gone up. So I want to put it to you, if there starts the removal of subsidy, at what cost, at what rate do you think we'll be getting a liter of fuel?
Well, it will be about 400 naira per liter. But that is just another conversation. I think there's need for us to provide the background to this. We don't want to shy away from the fact that Nigeria lives under the crushing effect of fiscal deficits. We are operating a system where we have to even borrow money to pay debt. And the Nigerian government borrowed about 3 trillion naira to cover capital expenditure in the first quarter of this year. I don't know if you are aware that we also have to borrow money to be able to finance our capital projects. But are these things sustainable in the long run? They continue to, our debt profile continue to rise almost out of control. If care is not taken, by the end of this year, about 7 to 9 trillion naira would have been paid for subsidy. It's something we want to continue to deal with as a country. I don't think it is what we should advance at a time like this. So are we prepared to pay 400 naira to get a liter of fuel? I think Nigerians out there will be able to answer that. But over the years, we have seen failure in leadership and contrasting, policies of government. We have not seen yet sincerity on the side of government to be able to hold them accountable to their words. Ideally, you want to give it to government that the money for other critical sectors of the economy. But as it is now, the issue of trust is still lacking, and we are very much bothered about that. So I don't see right now an average Nigerian who depends on energy to power their generator or will be willing to pay for the money made for policy or budgeted for subsidy rather would be invented into some other social sector of the economy. I mean, that issue of trust needs to be breached at a time like this.
So you think you're of the opinion that the government should not remove subsidy?
Well, I'm of the opinion that subsidy should be removed. There should be a template for the removal of subsidy, but we should first deal with issues of trust. We have governance deficit here. We have failure in leadership here. Are people actually willing to pay the price? Can we hold government accountable? The crisis we are in is very complex. Nigeria loses money every day. I mean, looking by the money budgeted for subsidy, we are paying about 40.1 billion naira every day to subsidize fuel. I mean, I'm from Ekiti State, for instance, and my state budget for the year is about 120 billion. So that means just within 4 days, the money the federal government is paying on subsidy will cover the whole budget of Ekiti State. Yes, there are monies that could be diverted, but are we ready enough to hold government accountable? Is the government also sincere enough? I so much believe that subsidy should be removed, but are we ready for that yet? This money could, go into health, into education, into social protection, but then is government ready to do that? Can we hold them responsible? I think I've made this very clear. It still has to do with social trust between the government.
So you talked about social trust. What can be done? How can we trust people? How can we change the narrative? What needs to be done in terms of trust?
Well, I think beyond subsidy, it's in Nigeria that you have almost the highest, cost of governance. People that want to remove subsidy should first start from themselves. Are they ready to cut their own cost of governance? I don't want to imagine how much goes to National Assembly every year. I mean, you are in this country with me, and we know what the issues are with ASU and the federal government. I don't want to imagine how much goes to the presidency, unbudgeted funds. I don't want to even talk about what goes to the office of the wife of the president out of the constitution. I mean, people should actually look inward to look at how best costs can be cut in this country. Then we have a social contract between the people. People, in form of referendum, are we now set for subsidy removal? These are the implications. So it's not just saying we are removing subsidy, we are maintaining subsidy. It's about having a clearly defined action plan with milestones and outcomes, to be able to say, let's say by this year we are removing subsidy, the 4 trillion naira budgeted for subsidy will be diverted into health, education, and social protection, clearly seen by the Nigerian people. I don't think that Nigerians will have issue, buying fuel at 350, 400 if they wouldn't also spend excessively on healthcare, if they wouldn't spend excessively maintaining their vehicles, if they have security, if they have lights, social amenities, and basic infrastructures, as the case may be. So that level of dialogue and interaction between government and the people still need to be established. I so much believe subsidy should be removed, but then it's a process that we must all sit down to talk about between the government and the people, like I always say.
The cost of living in Nigeria has gone up. I'm sure you're aware. And inflation rate is at, according to NBS, as at August, 20.52%. That's the inflation rate. And the cost of food has gone up. I'm sure you've been to the markets. You know what the state of things are. To buy a cup or a bottle of oil, it costs a fortune. And now it looks like food is for the rich. To get a plate of food, it looks like it's for the rich. So when we come back, it's time for us to take a break here. When we come back, we'll talk about the inflation rates and how the common man will fare in when the federal government removes subsidy. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. We still have our guest with us, Olamide Martins. Earlier, you spoke about oil subsidy, spoke about what the government needs to do after the subsidy has been removed. Now, let's talk about the inflation rates. Before we went to the quick break, I told you about the inflation rate in Nigeria is at 20.52%. Now, what will become of the common man if subsidy is removed? We know that those are the governments, those are work like the rich, the politicians. They don't really know what is happening to the common man, even if subsidy is removed. The common man is the one feeling the heat, feeling the toll of the hardship. So, what will become of the common man if this is done?
Thank you once again for having me. I think you've actually answered the question yourself. We have a lot of Nigerians still under the poverty line, and the answer is not far-fetched. The poor masses will eat, ghost, particularly in this era of increasing inflation. The figure you just cited is the worst, inflation figure that Nigeria will ever have since 2005, if I'm right.
Right.
And it doesn't look that it doesn't look like the figures will get better anytime soon. The masses will suffer, the poor will suffer, and that is not something we actually want to see. But then there's a place of sacrifice provided social trust is established. Americans don't just wake up to see America. The British don't just wake up to see Britain like that. There's a place of price paying. But are we actually ready to pay the price? Yes, that's another conversation. I think what government needs to do, if the removal of subsidy is the way to go, is to make massive investment in other sectors that will absorb the suffering of the masses. I want to imagine that the 40.1 billion naira we are paying every day on subsidy can be diverted to agriculture, can be diverted to even entertainment, to have a pool of our youth move out of the street and their social vices, can be diverted into critical sectors of the economy. So it might not yield immediate gains, but it is a necessary sacrifice. So I want to believe that as much as there will be increase in prices, there will be difficulty assessing these. I want to strongly also uphold the view that such an amount of money, 40 billion every day, about 7 trillion at the end of the year, could go a long way with the security challenges in the Northeast, thereby returning people back to the farm, cutting down the cost of the food production that will ultimately get to the final consumer. So, but like I did mention earlier, it involves an holistic view, an holistic planning, not just government saying that we are cutting this down. What are the yardstick? What are the marks? What are the actions planned that are necessary? What are the pains that we all need to go through? And if these are clear and Nigeria seems to embrace it, then it's a way that we should. I actually hold the view very strongly that it's not sustainable to be paying this amount of money on subsidy if actually we want to develop as a nation. But that issue of commitment and social trust must be established.
It's often said desperate times call for desperate measures. Perhaps this is the time. So it's interesting to know that whatever happens, whenever the price of oil, of petrol fuel goes up, it affects across the course other sectors. Food, because its transportation is needed. So I'm just imagining what will be happening to the common man. But whenever things go up in Nigeria, I believe you've stayed in Nigeria for quite some time now. Whenever the prices of things, goods, and services go up, they never come down. Are you aware? So what can you say about this? What should the government do to make this for there to be a balance?
Well, I think earlier today I was discussing with a colleague of mine. I said, having a critical look at other climes that's to work, government does not really have business with business. I can say that again. Government have business with business. What government should do is to create enabling environment businesses to strive. I think, and I still hold this view very strongly, that government can do much more better than it's doing at the moment. There's a policy called price control. Price control measures can be introduced. Government can go a long way to assisting farmers at the level, fertilizer support, grading, and all the likes, so that the final goods that gets to the table of a consumer is already at that level. People can actually see more benefits from government interventions in the area of mass transit. You mentioned the cost of transportation. People can see the impact of government in the area of health. Maybe children under the age of 5, free healthcare. That's already catered for. If you are 60 and above, free healthcare, free delivery for pregnant women, and the like. So government can still go a long way to intervening in critical sector are now left unattended to solely because they want to subsidize. And we know the reason why the issue of subsidy is taking a very, strong hold on government. I mean, it's not something we can debate about. Only a very few. There's a research that says that about 3% are the ones benefiting from subsidy, leaving the 97% of us having to struggle with the impact. So some people are actually smiling to the bank. And as a matter of fact, we are yet to meet our OPEC quota. Our production budget estimate is yet to be met. People are not talking about this. How are we not talking about why it's taking a whole country called Nigeria, the supposed giant of Africa, finding it difficult to have a functional refinery? People don't just want the system to work because of what they are benefiting from its failure or from its failure. So I think the sincerity of government still needs to be established. The critical money that we'll save from this can be reinvested into social sector that will ameliorate the plight of whatever subsidy we are paying. Well, so I think why we continue to wait and build that next, government can go a long way to dialoguing with people, to sharing this vision with people, and to hoping that they will buy into it. Well, I'm afraid it's a political season. Nobody wants to take government time like this. So I think the issue of subsidy will still have to be pending prior to the next the general administration that will take over sometime in April next year.
Okay, so you talked about the refineries. The NLC president Ayuba Waba said that Nigeria's public refineries needs to start working before the government removes subsidy. Do you buy this idea?
Well, I'm a climate change enthusiast, and that is why I mentioned earlier that we've seen a lot of contrasting statements coming from the same government. The other day, the Minister of Oil says Nigeria is ready to fly on the wings of gas, and then Osibajo, our Vice President, is saying that we'll cut down further emission of crude oil and further emission. I mean, these are contrasting statements from government. I think our refineries are moribund, not because they wanted to be moribund, but because of people forced them out of operation, simply because they want to fill the market. If we are still on the side of oil and gas, this is pure and simple chemistry. I mean, we can actually get our refineries working, one in Kaduna, one in Delta, Dangote is one in Lagos. Let us have a plan. Are we still going to rest on the wings of gas? For how many years? Then the proceeds from this for what? We should be talking about renewable solutions and renewable energies. We should be talking about solar. We should be talking about wind-powered, thermals. We should be talking about sustainable and homegrown innovations. But while we get to that junction, we can actually bring life back to our refinery. I mean, it's very crazy. If we produce crude in this quantity, even the amount we don't know, to be sincere. I mean, if we produce crude on a daily basis, we don't know the quantity, then we have to ship this crude out and then buy in higher price in other currency. I mean, it's crazy and insane. For what story do we want to tell our children that in the era of oil, we wasted it so annoyingly? So I think if it is just 2, 3, we can keep this refinery working. So people who just left it there to die and to decay because of their own benefit. These same people can bring it back to life. I think the Minister of State for Oil is in the process of revamping the Kaduna and the Port Harcourt refinery. But people need to look into their books. How far are they going to do this? And what are the milestones that we need to watch out for? And I also think that while we are making money from this, we should be looking at other alternatives that are now being embraced globally.
So we are not done with the refineries yet before we go to your other alternatives. About our refineries, about revamping our refineries. Do you think it should be a public-private partnership? Because we know that anytime the government try to do anything with anything has to do with business, or there is really no results. Do you think it should be committed to, there should be what kind of partnership, or how should it be done? Should it be left to the government to do it on their own, or a public-private partnership? Which one will be good for Nigeria?
Well,
let's not forget the issue of electricity in Nigeria. We know what happened. We know that we have been trying, the private have been trying, and it's not any better. So let's consider that.
Yeah, I think well, that's a very good point to consider. I've argued this with a friend of mine some times ago, that we shouldn't expect miracle to happen from Dangote refinery, for instance. We wouldn't say that a liter of oil now would go for 50 naira because he's a Nigerian and because he's bringing his own refinery to Lagos State.
He has to make profits too.
Like every other, he has to make profit. Well, I strongly believe, I don't know if you're also aware that NNPC is run like a private company right now. It's like a limited. They make money on behalf of government and remit same to Central Bank of Nigeria. I think there should be a form of collaboration, including the government providing the conducive environment, these private guys who have the resources to make it functional, and then there's an aspect of the people being involved in the process. Many a times we hand over our structures to government, thinking that government is somebody in Abuja or somebody in Lagos making decisions. No. Or just to the private guys whose interest is just profit, and profit. There's a place of people as well. So if there's a model that we can advance, that we incorporate the interests of government, the private sector, and people providing oversight, I think that will make a lot of sense than the structure that we currently have. Well, I think for the fact that if quality and efficiency is what we are aiming at, the private sector will be able to deliver on that. And to make it functional over a long period of time, nobody wants to run his own business ground. That is just a statement of fact. But when you look at government facilities and structures and systems over the years, is this natural reluctance that people display at government, facilities. So that needs to change as well. So we actually conversing a system that we put the people at the center of the decision. And then a system that will incorporate and enlist the concerns of the people, the frontline communities who bear the brunt of refining business, those who are suffering from suits in Port Harcourt, the real community in Kaduna, and then people maybe in Warri who don't even have access to water in their backyard. How are they being cared for? And then the larger picture. Will this now bring more fuel to our tanks? Will they now ensure that we don't have to queue again in filling stations? These are the questions to answer. But if there's a model that we should advance now, nothing is forcing us to adopt systems in other climes that don't fit into our peculiarities. We are Nigerians, for crying out loud. And there are things that should be Nigerian in nature. It's us looking back at ourselves and devising a system that will incorporate our concerns. And I think that is not the space science. I mean, it's something that we can do as a nation. So people, and the people at the center of decision is advanced.
About embracing alternatives in other climes. This is just one last question, I suppose, about embracing other alternatives in other climes. You talked about energy, yes, solar, but are we ready for it? Because every now and then we hear statements like things that, just not too long, the president said something about this. But it looks like we are not ready to take the bull by the arm. We are not, just in the words of mouth, we do not see the implementation or the zeal to carry it out.
Well, you cannot be correct with that statement. We have not yet demonstrated enough, commitment. But unfortunately, that is the global trend. People are actually moving away from oil and gas. People who seem to have taken this path before knows the damages, that it brings. I mean, go to Ogoni, River State, and ask them how they are faring about what we are talking about now. Go to Elegushi in Lagos State, where I work and where I've been to a lot of times, and ask them the impact of Dangote refinery on Elegushi, Mapopo area, in Babish, in Lagos here. Go to people in River State, Loibiru in Bayelsa State, who cannot even breathe because of soot, that they are exposed to. It is a process. We should have a transition plan. I'm glad that the vice president is talking about that is the way to go. Give ourselves in the boss. That is what we should be talking about. But is it to be immediate? No. There's an argument that, the global north that are now telling us to cut down emissions developed on the process of oil and gas. Now they are forcing it on us. And that we are even contributing about 4% to global emission. That's not a problem in Africa. Yet, that is the global discussion. But we want to be listening in 3 years, behind. We want to be backward in thoughts. We want to be a cake in our reasoning. The way to go global now is to consider renewables. And we have abundance renewable, raw materials, resources here in Nigeria. We have them in abundance. We have the Lagos State is surrounded by water, Kanji Dam. Look at the winds in the north. This would naturally give us energy that is shut off as a country. But then, this thing will not just happen overnight. There must be financial commitment and serious political will. This must come from a government who has won in very large scale the trust of the people, because that's very important in this discussion. That seems to be the way we should go. But how soon do we?
So I must say this is a good time to end the conversation. But before I let you go, I want you to advise Nigerians, yeah, because when the subsidy, when government starts to remove the subsidy, I can imagine what it will look like. How I want you to advise Nigerians about the gains, because this just may be for a period, but then the future, yes, maybe they should look ahead. Advise Nigerians, yes, before I let you go.
Well, I don't know if you noticed, I just took a very deep sigh. Well, Nigerians, I want to say that beyond us sacrificing, which is imminent now, we don't have a choice, is about us asking critical questions from government. It's about us asking government to open their books. It's about us demanding accountability and transparency from government. And it's about us asking the right questions. Let us follow the money, like one of our friends in Abuja is saying. Let us look for what this money would actually be reinvested in. Let us track these things and ensure that we have value, even for the money that we are saving and for the sacrifices that we are making. But the fact remains that Nigerians will never be able to sustain the payment of subsidy. I can give you the breakdown. The effect this will have on health, on economy, even on agriculture and security will be so huge. At the moment, we are already borrowing to pay debt. Do we want to keep doing it as a country? We are not a wealthy nation yet. We are rich. We could be wealthy, but not yet wealthy. Only if our resources are well managed. And subsequent payment of subsidy will not just take us to where we want to be. Thank you so much.
This is a good juncture to end the conversation. I've been speaking with Olamide Martins from Lagos, Nigeria. He's a social commentator. It was a beautiful conversation with you. Many thanks for joining us. Have a great day ahead.